Hello again, everybody. Last week we talked a little bit about the anatomy, the very basic anatomy of the vocal tract. This week I want to talk a little bit about very basic physiology of the vocal tract. Last week we talked a whole bunch about the different structures that make up the vocal tract, or the anatomy. This week we're going to talk about the physiology, or how things function. So the vocal tract is made up of all those structures we talked about, but it essentially comes down to three different subsystems. There's respiration, phonation, and resonation. So respiration, on a very basic level, the diaphragm pulls down and the external intercostals help swing the rib cage out, and that creates lower pressure in the lungs, which brings air into the lungs. That helps with air exchange. Then on the exhale, the abdominal muscles push against the viscera, which pushes against the diaphragm, and the internal intercostals help swing the rib cage in, and that pushes air out of the lungs. Now, that air is coming up through the bronchial tubes, through the two main stem bronchi, and up through the trachea, the windpipe, and that the vocal folds sit right at the top of the windpipe. That air pressure is the power for the vocal folds to vibrate. Now, the air pressure comes up through the vocal folds, and the vocal folds are closed slightly when we go to voice. They come kind of close like this, but they're not quite touching yet. And it's the inner arytenoids and the lateral cricoarytenoid muscles that help close those. And the air comes up through, and unlike what you would think would happen, when air comes up through two bodies that are really close together, they actually get sucked together. It's kind of like when you're driving on the highway and you've got a big truck next to you, you feel like your car is being pulled into it. It is. This is called the Bernoulli principle. And I'm going to leave a link below to a really cool set of experiments that NASA created. It's just a PDF document that NASA created to kind of give you some very elementary level understanding of the Bernoulli principle, but that's what causes the vocal folds to start to vibrate. And then because the vocal folds are elastic, they pull apart, and then we get this vibratory pattern, which we'll talk about more in the future when we talk more about the anatomy and physiology specifically of the vocal folds themselves. Now, so for today's purposes, we're just talking about the airflow comes up, sets those vocal folds into vibration, and that's the phonation portion of it. And then the next section is resonation. Now, if I took your vocal folds out of your body and I put them on a bench and I blew air through them, they would buzz. They would sound like that would be the noise you get. What makes your voice sound like your voice is the different ways that we manipulate the size of the three main resonating cavities. So the mouth is the oral cavity, the nasal cavity is the second one, and the third one is the pharynx, or the throat. Those three cavities are responsible for making our voices sound like our voices. So for instance, if I wanted to sound really hypernasal, I can let a lot of air extra through my nose. I'm letting my soft palate down a little bit in the back. And that's letting more air go through my nose, but it's sending the voice to different places, and the voice rings off of different structures in the nose than it would if I closed off my nose and kept it from that, so I sound like I have a cold. I can also really tighten up my tongue muscle and some of my throat constrictor muscles, and that closes off the space so my voice starts to sound tight. I can also make my voice sound very resonant by allowing lots of space for the voice to resonate. The bigger the space, the easier it is for the voice to be louder. So it's one way of projecting our voices. I can pull my tongue really far back in my mouth, and you can hear that changes my voice a little bit too. And then when I let my tongue go, it's a little bit better. So there's just so many different things we can do to change the resonating factors of our voice and making our voice sound like our voices. They're basically those three cavities are basically like the organ pipes of our voice. So again, those three subsystems are respiration, so airflow, both in and out, but to talk we use it on the exhale. Phonation, which is the actual vibration of the vocal folds themselves, and resonation, so using your mouth, nose, and throat cavities to project your voice in a way that is ideal for whatever it is you're trying to do. And that's kind of the down and dirty of it. So I think that's going to be it for today. If you liked this video, please feel free to hit the like button down below. And if you want to see more from me, then I would recommend that you also hit the subscribe button and that little bell so that it tells you when I'm putting out a new video. Also, if you're interested, I have a course on vocal wellness, and I'll put a link in the description below. Otherwise, I'm Stacey Menton, and I wish you success on your wellness journey.